Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Good morning, everyone. One and all. Well, I guess we always run into this with the time changes, the time zones. It's a good morning to me. It's 9 a.m. Pacific time here on a Friday for me. For you, if you're on the East Coast, it's lunchtime. And I'm wondering, those of you that are with us every day in particular, do you watch the show while you're on lunch break? Do you just, have it on your phone? Do you have it on the screen? How do you watch the show? How do you listen to the show? It'd be cool to know that. So if you get a chance, hit me up. Let me know in Discord. Let me know on Twitter X at the Ray Flowers. You can also follow me Blue Sky, Instagram, all those spots at the Ray Flowers. You can also pop in a note here on the show. For those of you that have been with us for a long time, thank you. Welcome back. You're all aware, I think, at this point that you can watch and listen to the show live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. Watch and listen live on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. Both of those spots, if you watch live, you can ask questions, and we'll address those throughout the show. You can also type in Fantasy Sports Daily, your podcast network. You can go to the website, fantasyguru.com, click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. Many ways to listen to the show or to watch it if you like, as well as Twitter X at Fantasy Guru's site. Again, I'm Ray Flowers. I'm with you Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Each week, Justin Fensterman's with you on Wednesdays. I'm with Jeff Manns on Wednesdays. The Elite Sports Show is Monday through Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That show, Elite Sports, 3 to 6 Eastern Time. I'm with him every Wednesday. The rest of the time, I'm with you here, and Justin's here on Wednesdays. Next week, I think we're good to go. I think we're going to kind of roll through the shows next week. So I don't think we're going to have a skip show next week. We might have a curtailed show for those of you looking for something before game action gets going on Thanksgiving. I think we'll have a little something here, but probably not a full 1 hour show, but we'll have something available. In terms of what we're going to do today, here we go. We got some Thursday night football to talk about. The snow, the game, the comeback, the poor team defeating the better team, 24-19. The Browns moved to 3-8. Steelers fall to 8-3. We'll talk a little bit more detail about that game. We'll talk about some news here, some big quarterback news. It's not on the page there, but Daniel Jones was just released by the Giants. We'll talk about that. There's growing concern about whether or not Brock Purdy will be able to be the quarterback of the Niners this week. We'll talk about that. Some other situations. CeeDee Lamb, Devonta Smith, Ladd McConkey in particular. Lots of wide receivers hurt all season long. That's continuing here in week number 12. In about 25, 30 minutes from now, we'll talk to Russell Clay. We talk to Russell every Friday. We visit with him here on the show about 30 minutes in or so. Today, we're going to ask him about the weather. I know last night it was a huge topic, so ask him how does weather impact his decision-making. We'll ask him about his decision-making with the flex options because that's always something that comes up. How do you determine, is there a cheat code when we're talking flex options? How long are running backs good for in a dynasty or keeper format? Is it 2 years, 5 years? What's the staying power of running backs? We'll talk to him about that. We'll also ask him the dynasty/keeper value of guys like Jaylen, Waddle, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Odunze, Keenan Allen, and Jordan Addison. By the way, you can see it there at the bottom of the screen before I pop myself up and give you a fuller view of my face. We still have the deal going right now, and I really, really encourage everyone to get involved. $99. Go to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. You get everything the rest of the season, and that's including all the playoffs except the Super Bowl betting guide. The Super Bowl betting guide is a separate thing, but other than that, you get everything from now through the playoffs for the seasonal game, for the DFS game, and for the wagering game. So if you want to place bets from now through the regular season, through the postseason, that's included in this package. If you want to play DFS, you've never done it before, or maybe you've done it and not had enough success, you'd like a little bit of a boost, you want to see what all the talk is about the core four and all of that, hit us up. Subscribe tab, top right corner. If you want to have help down the stretch here with your fantasy seasonal team, you want to just join Discord, ask questions about a trade you're thinking of making, maybe get some help with setting a lineup, you get that too. So for $99.99, you get all the football content the rest of the way. It's all one package. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner, all the articles, all the Discord rooms, all the live streams, all the rankings, everything over at fantasyguru.com. Okay, let's talk about Thursday night football. Kind of cool to get a game with some snow, right? It's always nice to have that. I don't know if it was a great feeling for those of you that had players active last night because it certainly seemed to have a little bit of an impact. But the Browns 24-19 over the Steelers. They did win that game somewhat surprisingly. On the Steelers side, let's start there. Russell Wilson was fine, 270 yards, a touchdown pass. had a fumble. I think interestingly, they keep trying to get Justin Fields out there. Justin Fields threw a pass. He ran 3 times for 26 yards. Russell Wilson is fine. And he will continue to just be who he is, which is fine. Are you winning if you have Russell Wilson as your QB1? No. Are you losing because he's your quarterback 1? No. He's really an ideal quarterback 2, especially for those of you in a super flex and everything like that. The let Russ cook thing is not obviously going to happen with the Steelers. They only threw 28 passes last night, but he was effective. Threw some moon balls, all that kind of stuff. I don't think what we saw from Wilson last night in terms of results was surprising at all. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, let's talk about that backfield situation, because that is something that I think is – it's a growing concern, but it doesn't seem like it's ever really – it's always a concern that's not really a concern. Because what's going to happen is Najee Harris is going to touch the ball more than Jaylen Warren. We've been going over this for 3 years now in the fantasy space. Everyone wants it to be Jaylen Warren. Everyone wants Jaylen Warren to have a bigger role. Everyone wants Najee Harris to disappear. We're 3 years into this. It's not happening. Now, it was interesting last night. The Jaylen Warren did run 9 more routes than Harris. That's normal. The interesting part, though, is he played 12 more snaps, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if that necessarily signifies anything substantial. Something to keep an eye on, though. What I do know is that every time that we get the quarterback of Russell Wilson, it's been 5 games with the Steelers now as a starter. Every one of those 5 games had at least 16 carries as Harris. 21, 19, 21, 18, 16. He's getting 18 carries a week for 75 yards every week with Russell Wilson in town. And remember, he has 300-yard games in a row, including one of those before Russell Wilson took over. So he's basically been touching the ball 18, 19 times for a month and a half now and giving you 85 rushing yards a game. Didn't do it last night. He had the touches, but he only ran for 41 yards. Najee Harris looked, Jaylen Warren looks, yay, 11 carries, 45 yards and a touchdown. If you played Warren, and I think we had him as running back 28, something like that this week, you got your hit. Huge hit for him. He catches 2 passes every week. I think this is the 5th game in a row where he's had 9 carries for 40 yards. Again, it was 11 for 45 last night. Warren has no upside at all. His upside is the touchdown, right? Because normally he's going to give you 70 yards from scrimmage, 60 yards from scrimmage, and that's it. 2 or 3 catches, giving you 8 points. He gets in the end zone, he gives you 14, 15. That's what we got last night. Despite what we saw last night, national broadcast, all of that, I would be stunned if the next time out the Steelers don't give it 18 times to Najee Harris and 10 times to Jaylen Warren. Just how it's going to be. Plan your rosters accordingly. We can complain about it all we want. It's just how it's going to be. In terms of the pass catchers for the Steelers, let's talk a little bit about Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin was the big pass catcher in this game, actually. 3 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown, which tells you a little bit about the passing attack in this game. But Calvin Austin, 3 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. It's a nice effort for Calvin Austin. Now, Russell Wilson's only thrown the ball, I believe, 30 times once in his starts. So there is not a lot of volume here. We know that we're going to get passes to Pickens. We know we're going to get passes to Warren. We know we're going to get some passes to Freiermuth. We know guys like, Jefferson and theoretically Mike Williams, will get passes. So Calvin Austin's always got a cap. It's probably 5 targets as a ceiling. Very difficult to play that and feel comfortable. In fact, if you look at his line this year, there's only 1 game where he has 6 targets, Calvin Austin. So, sorry, I got a cat hair in my mouth. Dog hair? Some hair. Not my hair. I know that because my hair is not that long. He's only 1 game with 6 targets as Calvin Austin. He's only had 5 targets the last 2 games. I have Austin in 1 team. It might even be the listener league we have on RT Sports. I'm trying to remember what league it is. But it's, he's like my last bench guy. And I think that in that league we have like 8, 10 bench spots or something. So, I didn't have him active yesterday. He's had 1 game all year with 4 catches, 1 game all year with 80 yards. Bottom line is what we saw last night was great. But Calvin Austin is really a dart throw type of guy. He is somebody that we're using in a DFS space, really. Let's go back to George Pickens. Lots of George Pickens talk. George Pickens, by the way, should always be starting right now. We all know that in the fantasy space. There's been a lot of questions about trading to get Pickens, both in seasonal and in the Dynasty rooms over at fantasyguru.com. I'm in there every day, except for Sundays. Lots of talk about Pickens. And we see George Pickens' talent, and it's tremendous. His body control, his ability to high point a football to make these special catches, they're fantastic. He had another 7 targets on 28 attempts last night, so another 25% target share for him. He continues to be living in the high-end rent zone in terms of target share. He is the only pass-catching Steeler that you can start with consistency and confidence. Now, he had 4 catches for 48 yards last night, which was disappointing. It's his worst effort with Russell Wilson in town. But again, they still ran the routes, still played the snaps, still had the target share. He just didn't produce last night. But for those of you that didn't get a chance to watch the game, at the end of the game, they throw a Hail Mary up into the end zone trying to come back here. And George Pickens I highlighted this in my weekly article, my matchup article that comes out every Thursday, the 10 to 14,000 word article. I talked about that, and I even showed the video there of when there was an interception thrown earlier this year against, was it the Redskins? Commanders, sorry. He tackled a defensive player. Like, the ball is intercepted and the guy's running the other direction, so he turns around and grabs a defensive player and tackles. I've said a lot recently, the last couple of days this week, with people talking about George Pickens, like, I love the talent. And I don't mean that he's a lunatic in the sense he's going to an insane asylum, but I've said many times he's a lunatic. At the end of the game last night, he's 18 feet away from where the ball is. I don't even know what he's doing. The ball, Russell Wilson chucks up one of these moon balls into the end zone, and go watch the replay. George Pickens is the only receiver that's not in the scrum, and he's not waiting to catch the ball off somebody. He's like 18 feet away. I don't understand that. He gets in a fight with the defensive back. So the game is over. He gets in a fight with the defensive back. Security from the stadium has to come down and separate him because everyone else, the game's over. Everyone else is running back to the sidelines or getting the hell out of the snow. George Pickens is having a fight with the defensive back back of the end zone against the wall where the fans are. He's a lunatic. You still start him? Yes. Could he have huge fantasy efforts? Absolutely. But if you're in a keeper or dynasty league, I'm telling you, he's just, and I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but the Steelers, for whatever reason, deserve to give their coach, Tillman, massive amounts of credit because he continues to keep a team on the straight and narrow and winning football games when in the locker room, these guys are crazy pants. George Pickens is crazy pants. I guess that's how it is with wide receivers at this point in time. Talking about Pat Freiermuth, he had 4 catches, 59 yards. That was his most receptions, 4 in a game since I think week 4. We were hoping that Freiermuth would be the 10-point-a-week tight end. He ain't. He's just not. He got 9.9 points last night, and that's the best he's done in 2 months. Like, he just doesn't produce. It's 3 catches for 30 yards. It's 3 catches for 29 yards. It's 2 catches for 27. Pat Freiermuth just doesn't get it done. And the only guy that's not involved in the offense to the level he is Mike Williams, who's now been with this team for 3 games and caught 1 pass. Like, I don't know why they traded for Mike Williams to not even utilize him. He played like 19 snaps. I don't get that at all. But the bottom line is, as I said earlier, the only guy that's a pass catcher with the Steelers that you can start with any level of confidence, and that's tough because he's a crazy pants, is George Pickens. All right, let's move on and talk about the other side of things. The Browns, Jameis Winston went for 219 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. A poor effort, partly because of weather, partly because of the Steelers. He did have a rushing touchdown, so it saved him from having a horrid effort. It was just a bad effort. David Njoku also dropped the ball that was right in his hands in the end zone. Okay. David Njoku caught 1 of 5 targets for 9 yards. He had a horrible game, including dropping a touchdown pass. Then made this spectacular leaping grab for a 2-point conversion. David Njoku, tremendous talent. He's caught 5 balls, I think, in like 5 or 6 games. Last night was the first time he hasn't done it, basically since he came back from injury. He gives you that floor normally. Didn't give it last night. And Winston in the passing attack a little bit, just a little bit. Now, well, how did I have these guys listed on here? I did talk about the wide receivers. Okay, Cedric Tillman had a head injury. Tillman had 3 consecutive games of 6 catches and 75 yards. He caught 3 touchdowns in those 3 games. The last 2 games, he's had about 75 yards total. So his production the last 2 games has been disappointing. He was tied for the lead amongst wide receivers and targets heading into the 4th quarter last night. Got the head injury, didn't play. Jamari Thrash, basically replaced him in the 4th quarter. We'll have to keep an eye on Tillman and his availability for the next game. Obviously gets a couple of extra days here because it was a Thursday game, which is good news. So there's a much better chance he's available for the Browns next game than if they had been on a regular or short week, of course. Tillman, 2 catches, 28 yards, had a fumble. Poor effort, disappointing effort. And, it's easy to say what I've seen in the press, Jerry Jeudy, who caught 6 balls for 85 yards. I've seen a lot of people start to say, well, Jerry Jeudy's the number 1 receiver for this team. I don't think that's the case. I think it's Cedric Tillman. Has Jeudy outperformed Tillman the last 2 games? Absolutely. Judy's catching 5 balls for 70 yards every game now with Jameis Winston. Interestingly, as we talked about yesterday with Tyler Beaker, who's on every Thursday, Jeudy, Tillman, Moore, and Njoku each have about a 20% target share with Winston. Last night, Jeudy had 6 targets. Tillman had 4 because he was hurt. 5 for Moore, 5 for Njoku. Continued exactly the same last night. So whether we're talking Tillman or Jeudy or Moore, all these guys are basically getting the same target share. Moore caught 3 balls for 21 yards in a disappointing effort. Again, it was one of those efforts, and it's one of those scenarios where it's a short week, you're playing a tough defense, and the weather is bad. The only reason I and a lot of people at FG, the experts, were even talking about starting any of these Browns is because we have 6 teams on bye. In a normal scenario, a short week against the Steelers and bad weather, no. But we have 6 teams that are out of the mix. So unfortunately, a lot of the Browns that were active last night simply didn't live up to expectations. The one that did was Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb scored 2 touchdowns, blowing away expectations. Nick Chubb also averaged 3.0 yards a carry. Nick Chubb, since he's returned to action this season, has averaged 3.0 yards a carry. He has no oomph. He's just not the guy he was before his knee injury. He had 20 carries last night for 59 yards and the 2 touchdowns. So he didn't do anything. He had a massive volume of work, which was our hope. That he would have a huge volume of work and that would lead to production. It didn't, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So it softened the blow. A 2-yard touchdown run, a 2-yard touchdown run. So he was a huge win in the fantasy space, even though he's done nothing to this point, even though he shouldn't be expected to do much because, again, he's not the same guy. The offensive line isn't the same guy. Last night was the first time in 4 games that Winston didn't throw 40 passes. Be cautious with the excitement with Chubb, but yesterday was a win. So let's take it with Nick Chubb. All right, let's move on. I see a bunch of comments, questions, and everything in the chat room. I love you guys talking back and forth with one another. That's great to see. One of the situations I saw mentioned briefly, and we'll talk about hopefully all of them, Brock Purdy's shoulder. This is another example, I was thinking about this, of why asking start and sit questions, and I say you can't ask till Wednesday, right? I get questions at 4:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. It's like, what are we doing? If you have guys playing Thursday, get it. But we're getting later in the year now. We're in the double-digit weeks. All these guys are beat up. All these guys are hurt. You really, really should be waiting till later in the week. And don't say, well, I'll just ask later in the week. We're answering hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions, answering the same question multiple times because you want to ask on a Wednesday and then you're just going to ask again Saturday morning. It would be helpful to us if you just asked Saturday morning. But yeah, it's going to be difficult because the situation with Brock Purdy, now the Niners' whole offense is up in the air. Here's what we got going on with Purdy. We knew he had a shoulder issue. They kind of said that, or they said that earlier in the week. Kind of no big deal. Then you start seeing some of the beat writers saying, well, yesterday Purdy went out on the field. He came off the field. The beat reporters I saw were speaking of the fact that Purdy didn't do his normal stuff, and he did not look good. He was not able to throw the ball with any zip because of that shoulder issue. So they talked to Kyle Shanahan after practice, and Shanahan said he did a little bit more on Thursday than he did on Wednesday. And then a bunch of coach speak that basically said, yeah, we'll see. Then we got the information from John Lynch, the GM, that said that they ran an MRI on the shoulder of Purdy. And that, here's the quote, feel good about where it is from that standpoint. Okay, so they ran an MRI. The shoulder's not torched. That's good. Furthering the quote of the GM, John Lynch. Brock will show up here today. We'll see where he goes from practice and go forth accordingly. It is tenuous. So tenuous is not a good word if you think there's a strong likelihood of Brock Purdy playing this week. Can't rule out Brock Purdy playing. But right now we got the head coach going, blah, 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 blah. We got the GM using the word tenuous. We've got beat reporters saying he didn't look right at practice. The Niners starting quarterback always talks to the press on Thursday. No Niners quarterback talked to the press on Thursday. Connecting all these dots, it seems like a true concern about whether or not Brock Purdy plays this week. According to the GM, John Lynch, this is the end of the quote. Here's the quote. Quote, Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs would both be ready, but Brandon would get first snaps, unquote. So according to the GM, Brandon Allen would be the guy that would be the quarterback if Brock Purdy is down. Okay. I had someone ask me in the Discord, who is it? The answer is Brandon Allen. If you're starting Brandon Allen, good God, more power to you. You can't do that, right? And the question then becomes, what is the value of the Niners, right? Because Brock Purdy is really good at what he does. What does this do to the offense? We'll talk about that over the weekend at fantasyguru.com. Jeff Mans will talk more about that on his show, Elite Sports Show, again, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m., Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We'll talk more about that on his show. We'll obviously be talking in Discord and answering all the questions with all of you over at fantasyguru.com. Remember, click that subscribe tab, top right corner. $99 for all the football content the rest of the way. I will continue to stay on that situation because it is an evolving one. Hopefully, we'll get more information today after practice, and then we'll have more clarity on what's going on this weekend with the Niners. Speaking of the Niners, George Kittle is limited at practice on Thursday, coming back from the hamstring injury. At this point in time, as we talked about yesterday, the expectation is that Kittle will play this week. So that's where we're going. Let's hope that it's Brock Purdy throwing in passes. Now we talk about the wide receivers who continue to be a source of consternation, if we're being honest about this. All season long, wide receivers have been hurt. All season long, wide receivers have been unproductive. You got some big names that are, CeeDee Lamb's got a back and a foot issue. He didn't practice on Thursday. Now, okay, that's not, he's a veteran. Who cares about one practice? Have to see on Friday, though. We've talked about this with Lamb, too. This team is going nowhere. Lamb was still productive last week, working with Cooper Rush. He had, 8 or 9 catches, 80 yards, whatever it was. I'm trying to remember, 8 for 79, something like that. 7 for 89, I don't know, something like that. Still productive there, but do you push CeeDee Lamb with nothing to play for? No. Is he going to be able to play? We'll see. Today's huge. So we have to follow those reports on Friday. We might get that it was a Veterans Day off. He's beat up, but he'll be fine. We heard that last week. I know there's all the concern waiting till Monday whether he would play. He played through the back injury. He was fine. We'll see, though. Now there's the foot, and now there's DNPs in practice. So Friday is really important on that practice report with CeeDee Lamb. Devonta Smith. Oof. Devonta Smith has a hamstring injury. We all know that. He has now missed 2 straight practices this week, though. Wednesday and Thursday, no practice. Another veteran, another guy who knows what's going on, could return to practice today and be fine for the weekend. But remember, that's 2 missed practices in a row. That's not ideal. That tells you at least that the team is really managing and monitoring this with Devonta Smith. So, this has been something he's been dealing with since, week 10? The hamstring? That is something to keep a close eye on. Unfortunately, there's no real wide receiver pivot with the Eagles. They probably run the ball more. Dallas Goedert probably gets a little more involved. You can't look at Johan Dotson and think he's going to get 8 targets like he's Devonta Smith. So that would change the game plan for the Eagles if Devonta Smith is unable to go. We'll have to follow those reports with him today. Ladd McConkey didn't practice yesterday because of his shoulder injury. I get the sense at this point in time that the expectation is that McConkey will play. We'll see what the practice reports say with the youngster, with the Chargers. Have to watch it very closely today. Just because we're getting the sense that he'll play doesn't mean we're not going to get a report today saying, oh, crap, right? So Ladd McConkey, I know that Jeff Mans has talked a little bit about Josh Palmer this week. It's kind of a sneaky late pivot if you got no other option in this matchup this weekend with the Bengals. The Ravens, the Ravens, who can be shredded through the air. It would be a significant loss for Herbert and for the Chargers if McConkey is unable to go. Talking about the backfields, we talked about this yesterday. We're having a redo today. The Raiders, Zamir White's got the quad. Alexander Madison's got the ankle. 2 days in a row, now neither guy's practiced. Alexander Madison and Dylan Laub might be it, folks. It's a bye week, 6 teams on bye. No one was counting on Madison or White anyway. But here we go. My read of the situation right now at 9:30 on a Monday, or excuse me, on a Friday. What am I saying? My read of the situation is that Amir Abdullah would be the 3rd down back. Laub would be the 1st and 2nd down back. They'd split things up. They'd split the workload. Then it all comes down to, what does the matchup tell us? What's the game flow going to look like for Las Vegas? Las Vegas is set to play Denver. That is not a good defense to face. That is not good news for the Raiders. That is not good news for anyone on 1st and 2nd downs. Dylan Laub trying to run the football. It might be more of an Amir Abdullah game just because there'd be nothing to see on the ground for this team. But Amir Abdullah and Lau both tremendously dicey options right now. We'll continue to update all this again at fantasyguru.com. The rankings, we'll talk about it in Discord. But right now, even with the 6 teams on bye, that is just not a matchup that says we need to be starting Raiders running backs this week. The Buccaneers offensive coordinator, echoing something the head coach said about a month ago. OC Liam Cohen said that Sean Tucker needs to get more touches. Everyone's getting really excited about Rashad White, and he's got the streak of touchdowns, which is unsustainable, but he's got the streak of touchdowns. Everyone's been excited about Bucky Irving because he's a better running back than Rashad White. Sean Tucker had that one huge game where he was player of the week or whatever the hell it was, right? The head coach came out and said we're going to get him more involved. He hasn't been more involved. Hasn't happened. But the OC just said the team wants to get him the ball. And it's not going to be to the point where they're not going to have 10 touches for each of the 3 guys, I don't think. Let's hope they don't do that. But if he's getting 8 touches and he's siphoning off 3 or 4 from Irving and 3 or 4 from White, that makes both Irving and White nothing but flex plays. And might be good for the football team to have Tucker involved. Not good for us in the fantasy space. And I would argue, as I have before, having 3 running backs doesn't work. You need to, there's no rhythm there. You don't want to give a guy a series and this guy a series and then this guy is. I don't think that works. I don't think the players believe it works. But it sounds like Tampa Bay might do that. So if you're planning on starting Irving or White this weekend, the OC is saying they're going to get the ball more to Tucker. Something to think about. Sam Darnold, who we talked about yesterday with the foot injury, full participant in practice yesterday. That was what we expected as of yesterday for Darnold to play this weekend. Keep an eye on the reports today and all of that, but it does seem like Darnold will be able to be his normal self and do what he normally does, which is make some good plays, make some spotty plays. By the way, my Coffee Corner piece is up over at fantasyguru.com. I mentioned this yesterday. Go check it out. Eerie similarities between the performances on the road and at home for Sam Darnold. It's really weird. But anyway, he's expected to play. The next guy, and I'm asking this, and if anyone, please leave a comment here in the chat room if you have an answer to this. Why am I getting so many Justice Hill questions this week? I've gotten more Justice Hill questions this week than I've gotten all season long. Justice Hill, number 1, is a satellite running back that only sees the field when they're on 3rd downs and in 2-minute drills. The Ravens defense is bad. The Chargers are probably going to have some success, sure. But the Ravens have the number 1 offense in football. So unless you think the Ravens are going to fall behind to the Chargers, I don't even see how game flow would play into Justice Hill being a thing this week. Because if the game's close, it's Mr. Henry. Secondly, Justice Hill has a concussion. He's got a head injury. So why have I gotten 5 Justice Hill questions in the last 24 hours? I don't even understand. We have him ranked 45th over at fantasyguru.com this week, but I've legitimately gotten 5 questions about starting him this week. I don't get that. Again, at this point in time, we don't even know if he's going to play. I don't get it. So Angelo says that he's one of the few running backs still on the wire. Maybe that's it, Angelo. Maybe you're right. But yeah, he's running back 45 in the rankings. He's got a head injury. The game flow the game script doesn't seem to favor him being involved. So I don't get that at all. And then finally, before we talk to Russell Clay, the news broke just about, 45 minutes, an hour ago at this point. The Giants have released Daniel Jones. And while we knew that we thought Daniel Jones would be the backup quarterback, then we heard, he's going to be the 3rd quarterback. They're just not going to play him to save money, right? They don't want to get hurt and owe him $25 million next year. He was released by the Giants. So the Giants still owe him $13.8 million next year that they'll have to pay him. They'll have a cap hit of $20 million. So they're just adios, right? They'd rather pay the 14 than the 25. I get it. Okay, fine. He's gone. So no one's going to pick him up with his contract, right? So he'll pass through waivers and basically become a free agent. So he'll be able to sign with whoever the hell he wants here. And while Daniel Jones may never be a starting quarterback long-term ever again, he might always be that, Andy Dalton quarterback 2 that teams can have and feel really good about their backup quarterback, because a lot of teams, as we have seen, when they go to the backup quarterback, it doesn't go well. This is really fascinating because there's a lot of teams out there that could use a quarterback boost. And I saw some folks here in the chat room, talking about it, throwing up some questions. Danny Dimes of the Cowboys. Make it happen, Jerry Jones, says Sean. John G, Jerry Jones to the Daniel Jones to the Cowboys, so he could start on Thanksgiving against the Giants. That would be epic. That would be epic. I don't know if that's even a possibility. He could sign and then be starting for a team, 5 days after he signed. But anyway, so we'll follow that situation with Daniel Jones. His obviously keeper dynasty value gone. I guess there's a chance he could be added somewhere and be starting some games here down the stretch. But at this point in time, there's just nothing actionable about that. You can't be looking at Daniel Jones in the fantasy space. All right. It's about halfway through the show. It's about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. What do we do every Friday when we hit this point of the show? We bring in our man, Russell Clay. Let's see if Russell is in the conservatory with the piano or if he's on assignment. That's the word I was looking for. I had 2 beers last night. Apparently, I can't think after I have 2 beers. Is he on assignment at a stadium? We'll bring him in. It's Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Russell, how are you today? Oh, you are on assignment. How are you?
What's up? We're doing Jackson. I don't know how many shows I've done with Jackson, but it's not enough. That guy's the man.
He is catching 10 passes now. He's by the way, since you brought that up, he's talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba. For those of you that aren't watching, Tyler Lockett, even rosterable in most leagues at this point, he's just not getting any work anymore.
Tyler Lockett has had an incredible career. However, him and Adam Thielen have been the bane of my existence in Dynasty for a decade now. I'm ready for them. You see Adam Thielen? You see what he does, everyone? He's going to have a 30-point game when it doesn't matter at some point, and I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose a fantasy championship because of Adam Thielen for the 15th straight year. So I'm ready. I'm bracing for it. But jokes aside, here's the thing. They have Metcalf healthy, and Jackson is really developing into that special player we saw at Ohio State. So I do think Lockett's going to have games, but at this point in his career, he's just a catch and fall down guy. Mm-hmm. Still got great speed, but yeah, it's JSN and Metcalf.
I love those jerseys, by the way. I think they should go to that full time. The old school, the blue. Yeah, it looks way better than my DJ Chark from 4 years ago when he was with the Jaguars. But I like the picture. There's cheerleaders and smoke, so what the hell, can't go wrong with that. Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Russell, you wear a multitude of hats for us at FG. You do seasonal football, you do dynasty football, you do college football. I wanted to ask you a couple of broad questions before we get into some players here. Everyone was freaking out with the weather last night before the game. What do I do with Steelers? What do I do with Browns, right?
Yeah.
How do you view weather? Because it's going to come up here, that point of the year where it's getting cold and rain and snow. Like, what scenario does weather really concern you? And which scenarios is it just kind of something we deal with?
So a lot of the questions were centered around running backs, which I found interesting because worse weather means there's going to be more running. And while Nick Chubb, I thought of a hilarious tweet that I'm not going to put out there, but I'm pretty sure Najee Harris and Nick Chubb had the same amount of yards. The only difference was Chubb found the end zone twice, and it all worked out. So There were a lot of folks on our site that were on Chubb, so I'm happy for that. That was one of the rare occasions, Ray, where I did watch and I was like, okay, the weather is kind of crushing the passing game here. Jerry Jeudy did fine, but I'm more thinking of Cedric Tillman.
Right.
There's only so much you can do with that setup. So yes, in extreme situations, wide receivers are going to be affected. So I will admit that. I see Angelo's talking about some showers in that Arizona-Seattle game. I haven't looked at that yet, but rain, of course, can make things a little more difficult to pass as well. So take it into account. But again, I've seen so many games over the years where we sit a guy because of weather and then he goes off for 150 yards and a touchdown. And I'm talking receivers too. So there's two sides to this coin, and it is a highly variable situation.
A second broad question for you is the flex question. And this is coming up a ton this week, obviously, because everyone's on bye and scrambling. But is there a general rule you utilize when you're talking advice with flex options? Like, a lot of people will say, look, if you're talking about a running back who's getting 15 touches, you start him, right? That kind of thing. some people will say, well, it doesn't matter if he's getting Najee Harris 15 touches. Who cares, right? So is there an overarching series of rules or directions you take when setting the flex? My thought is that not enough people say, here's my flex option. Not enough people make that decision based upon their opponent that week. Like, do you need the Xavier Worthy potential 20 points, or do you need the 10, 12 points of Najee Harris, right? I think you really should be judging your flex option based upon your matchup that week. I don't know if enough people do that. What are your thoughts in general on how to make that determination?
So my experience as a player, right? Over 17 weeks, it's all going to come out in the wash, right? Like if you're constantly making the right decision over 17 weeks, it's all going to work out. And there are going to be weeks, guys, I'll tell you this. I made a worse fantasy start sit decision than any of you in your entire life. It was my fantasy semifinal, and I got to choose between, it was Derrick Henry, one of the Titans weeks where he scored 40 plus points, or it was some tight end, and he scored 7 points, and I lost out on 37 points, and I lost my matchup because I started Derrick Henry in 2017 or 2018. And it's like, Derrick Henry had scored 5 points per game before that. There are going to be weeks where you miss out on that ceiling performance, in that flex spot, especially. There are going to be weeks throughout the year, but there are going to be other weeks. And I feel like it's one of those where, right, Ray, when you start the right decision, you don't think about it. You just go, yeah, of course I did.
Yep.
But those more rare situations where you don't and you mess up and there's a 10-point difference and you lose your matchup because of that decision, that gets 10 times the emphasis because you're like, I messed up there. It didn't go according to plan. It wasn't perfect. So what I would say is every season in each league say, okay, over 17 weeks, I'm going to make the right decision most of the time, but account for the fact that there are going to be a few weeks here or there. And I know I kind of went off the beam here on what Ray was talking about in terms of those actual mini decisions each week, but you are going to make the right decision most of the time, especially if you're hanging out with us, you're hanging with Rich, you're hanging with Jeff Mans, you're hanging with Ray and all these fellas, Tyler Beaker. You're going to make the right decision most of the time. And on those occasions that it doesn't work, it's like, okay, I can accept this. I know this is part of the game. I'm going to tilt because I'm going to tilt too, because it pisses me off too. But, accept that is part of what we're doing here.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Another question, and we're going to spend the rest of the visit here, besides taking questions from the folks, talking a little bit Dynasty Keeper League. By the way, Dynasty League means you keep your whole roster. Keeper League means you're keeping less than your whole roster. A lot of questions coming up is people trying to address things, looking ahead in fantasy, right, for next year. And I want to ask you a question about the running backs. You just mentioned Derrick Henry, who's that unicorn, who's a superstar running back for a decade. Like, that just doesn't happen. How long are running backs good for? Is there a general – I saw you commenting on that, I think, in Discord the other day. It's like, is it 2 years, 5 years? Like, where is there a general rule, or is it all specific on the player?
Totally specific. The problem is we know over the course of a career, generally speaking, we're going to like year 3, year 4, year 5 is when running backs really start to fall off, right? However, we have this one running back class that is just saying, no, we're not. We're just going to keep plowing through. And we used to have those guys, the Frank Gores, right? LaShawn McCoy, things like that. But we missed an entire generation. An entire generation of running backs got wiped off the board in 3 to 5 years. We had the Le'Veon Bell, we had the Todd Gurley, we had the Melvin Gordon, we had the et cetera, et cetera. So this feels very foreign, but we're actually springing back to, looking at Joe Mixon this year, looking at McCaffrey, looking at Derrick Henry. this used to happen all the time. And I think a lot of folks in dynasty leagues got used to saying, okay, well, Todd Gurley happened. Running backs, they're done now. They're done after 5 years. And what we're seeing is, and it's becoming a problem in dynasty because all these win now teams are not win now teams. They've been winning the last 3 to 5 years because they have Kamara, and then they get Joe Mixon this year for a second rounder this offseason. And then it's like, okay, well, the same guys are going to keep winning every year. So it's a complicated topic right now, but I would say, if anything, the less rushing attempts they're getting now and more usage in the receiving game, we might see more longevity in these careers. What do you think, Ray?
Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com, by the way. I think it's a really interesting question. I think my stance has been, because I'm in a dynasty league where it's 16 teams and we have 50 roster spots. Like, it's a whole NFL team, IDP, the whole thing. I'm of the opinion that too many people, and I see this all the time, do exactly what you just said. Here's a second round pick. I want a second round pick. I'll give you Joe Mixon. Don't do that. I as much as I want to build a team for the future, I want to win now. People have this. I'm in a dynasty league. Are you going to be in the league in 3 years? Like, I don't, you're going to get married, you're going to move, you're going to switch jobs. Like, too many people are planning for 2027. So I've always been of the opinion, try to win now anyway. So the Joe Mixon types of the world who coming into the season, like you correctly pointed out, was like, he's running back 15. He's old. Here, sure. I'm all over that if someone would trade that to me, because I think that there is something to be said for being a veteran, and even the Najee Harrises of the world. Like, it's nothing to see here, but he's running back 19 when the season's over, right? It's like, that's just what it is. So I like the veteran, established guy that's getting work. And I think that those guys can last 5 to 7 years. I don't want to plan on that because, again, those guys can get replaced. But I've said it, you said it, Tyler, Armando, we're touch whores, right? Like, give me the guy. It's great if he looks good in underwear and runs fast, but who's going to get the football? So those veteran guys oftentimes end up getting the football, Russell.
And the final thing I would say is I've come to the stance of I'm just riding it till the wheels come off with these running backs. The Zeke example is a little different because he did not have the second half of the career that we want, but he did have a few other decent years when people were selling him. So you look at the Derrick Henry. Now, the extreme example is Dalvin Cook, where, he had that final good year and he hasn't been heard from since. So, you hold through that and that sucks, right? I held through Todd Gurley. That sucks. But if you held Derrick Henry in what, Ray? 2019, 2020, people were talking about him getting old. You've gotten 5 straight league winning years. I mean, the McCaffrey one, he got 2 straight injury filled years. Mm-hmm. And if you bought him that offseason, you got 3 straight league winning years and maybe another one as he heads toward the end of this year. So, yeah.
Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com. What's the value of Jaylen Waddle in a keeper or dynasty league? Either one. Because, this offense, we've talked about him previously on the show, and it's like 70 catches for 1,100 yards. And then this year, the offense goes, still young, still talented. Tyreek Hill's not getting any younger. He's got all kinds of off-the-field problems. We still buying Jaylen Waddle?
Buying?
Okay, all right.
I gotta say, Ray, this one is weird. He's taken a lot of hits. He's been really banged up early in his career. And unlike running backs, wide receiver careers are much different because some of these guys just disappear for no real reason. We don't know why. Running backs, it's almost always injuries or they lack the athleticism fails them. But there's guys like Jaylen Waddle where you watch the games and you go, whoa, that's a bad drop. Whoa, that's like he just went down on very little contact. And you're like, this is not, Ray, this is not year 1 and 2 Jaylen Waddle. It's just not. It's a totally different guy. So I do have pause, and I did move him down in the dynasty ratings this week. Not totally. I think he's going to be around for a while, and I do think some of this has to do with the offense he's on. But I had Jaylen Waddle like 88 in the dynasty ratings to start the year. I thought, we all kind of thought this guy was still going to be a future star and maybe take over for Tyreek Hill after he's fallen off. And now I do not have that stance anymore. So yes, Waddle's going to be around forever, but we do fall into the trap with some of these dynasty wide receivers where we say, yeah, but he had that year too, 1,300 yards. He's still like, he could do better than that when he gets older. And it's like not always the case. So good wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in the future. But like you said, am I buying? Probably not for the price tag. Yeah.
Okay. Are you buying Michael Pittman? Looks like he's going to be working with Anthony Richardson potentially for a few years here. Been really messy this season. A lot of people forget just how productive he has been the last couple of years. Yeah. But you're shaking your head like you're not buying Pittman either.
Yeah, this is the target. They got that on the edge there, and it's like 3 for the price of 1, and you're like, yeah, I'm good. You can keep him. I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So just totally out on Pittman.
I'm not out as a player, but I am out on this Colts situation. Josh Downs is good. Mm-hmm. They drafted Adonai Mitchell for what God knows why.
Right.
They have Alec Pierce they have all these guys for a couple years. So I imagine maybe they bring in a tight end this offseason, Mo Alley Cox. And it's like, what are we doing here?
They use 4 a week. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So I like Michael Pittman, but I think last year was probably a ceiling.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. What about the receivers of the Bears? DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen. Different ages, different expectations, different horizons for future growth and all that. Where are those 3 guys in a dynasty league? Allen, Moore, and Odunze.
DJ Moore is going to be fine. I have to say, I was a huge JSN fan, Jackson Smith-Njigba, heading into last year, and the way he was used in Seattle last year was pretty criminal. And the way DJ Moore was used last year was pretty criminal, or this year in Chicago. So that might have been a Shane Waldron thing. I think DJ Moore is going to be fine rest of the season. Keenan Allen, that's one I look at and I say, okay, he is 31, 32. A lot of injuries. This Bears offense is very strange, even without Shane Waldron. So I would look at him and say, okay, this might not be what I was looking for there. And then Rome Odunze on that offense. We've already packed our bags for this year, Ray.
Right.
We're like, all right, let's just see a few nice games. Let's get out of here. Maybe it can be a flex towards the end of the year, but this has not gone how I would have wanted, but we've seen enough signs where I can say this may be a future one. So I'm still very excited about him.
Russell, we have a situation with the Vikings where we don't really know who the quarterback's going to be. Sam Darnold has stepped up this year and played pretty well, pretty effective. They obviously have J.J. McCarthy, who they drafted and thought would be the future, and he's had the knee injury and a little bit of, not I guess a setback. He had an infection in his knee. He's supposed to be fine, all that. But we don't know who the quarterback's going to be next year for the Vikings. Jordan Addison, we know he's going to be behind Justin Jefferson. Yep. In theory, T.J. Hawkinson is fully healthy, and he's got a more substantial role in the offense than we've seen since his return. So to me, Addison's like 6 targets a week. Is that just what we got here? And, is he going to, heaven forbid, is he going to go a Jahan Dotson? Like, is he going to vanish, or is he just going to continue to be this guy?
Yeah. He's not going to vanish.
Okay.
He is good, but like you mentioned here and broke down that offense, with Jefferson and Hawkinson healthy, he's a clear 3. So you need a high ceiling quarterback in order to unlock him completely. We look at Kirk Cousins. We don't look at him as a high ceiling quarterback, but he actually was for fantasy. He's a guy who can get 3 guys to be high-end fantasy weapons.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at. Can J.J. McCarthy be that? In his first year as a starter, probably not. So then what are we looking at? We're looking at year 4 of Addison's career as the real breakout. So we're going to continue to see him be good at certain points. But his rookie contract is kind of toast in terms of ceiling, 1,000+ receiving yard seasons, top 20 fantasy results. So for Dynasty, you're in a weird spot because the talent's there, but he might need to be in a new place to really unlock that.
Russell Clay at fantasyguru.com. Remember, go to FG, click the subscribe tab, top right corner, $99 the rest of the season. All the football content, DFS, seasonal, and wagering. We got a bunch of comments here. Got a bunch of comments here today, Russell. So let's jump in the room here. Henry V says he listens live at work. Yes, Henry, way to go.
Let's go, Henry.
Don't get fired, but good work. Yeah. Yeah. He said that Tillman killed him last night. The couple catches, 28 yards. Is he the best wide receiver for the Browns moving forward? Sean H has the exact same question. Who is Tillman moving forward? Yeah. Talk to us. Who is Tillman moving forward? Where does he fit in the pecking order with Moore and Jeudy?
So last night was not good. And he did leave with a concussion after his first catch, which sucked, but his first catch was not till the third quarter. Now, we can blame the weather, which I would blame part of this, but Jerry Jeudy has been the one the last 3 weeks. And as much as I love Tillman, and I'm still very in on Tillman as a talent, the Jameis Winston experience has been they're spreading the ball out more than I would have expected. Jordan Aiken's getting involved. Mm-hmm. Even that weird guy they signed off the practice squad popped up with a catch, fooled the announcer last night. I forget his name. I don't even know who that guy was. So yeah, he had a 30-yard catch last night. So Jerry Jeudy.
Whiteheart, right?
Yeah, Whiteheart. Yeah. I'm like, all right, Whiteheart.
I didn't remember it myself.
But when you look at that offense, Jerry Jeudy, kind of gets crapped on nowadays because of all the injuries and didn't really come into form. But we once viewed Jerry Jeudy as, can this guy be a future star? And he's really developing. He stayed healthy. He looks great. So that's a tough one for Tillman because Jerry Jeudy could be awesome if he's healthy. Elijah Moore is not going to compete with Tillman for deep targets, but he is going to get a lot of targets. So that's a problem. And then you have David Njoku, one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. So it's a little more congested than I would have wanted.
David P has a question. These wide receiver options are available to him this week. Romeo Doubs, Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers. What are your thoughts? Thielen said yesterday, I don't even know if I'm playing this week. So that guy, apparently it's going to take his hamstring 4 years to recover. Going back to your Adam Thielen talk earlier, he injured in week 3. We don't know if Thielen's going to play. Myers is likely to get Surtain because no one else can catch the football with the Raiders. We don't even know who the Raiders are going to dress as the running back position. That offense could torpedo this weekend. And then you got Romeo Doubs, who, is floating around and good offense, good quarterback. How do you rank these guys this week? Let's say Thielen's playing. Obviously, if he's not playing, we know how that goes.
I would lean Myers here just because as long as Minshew's starting, there's going to be passing volume. The Thielen thing is weird. Again, he will score 30 points against me in week 17, but for this week, maybe not. And the Doubs thing, the Packers are rotating 3 to 4 wide receivers and 2 tight ends and being really goofy. So I would just go with Myers.
TJ's got a question about the flex spot, super flex, I guess, but it doesn't matter. They're all flex options. Jonnu Smith, who has had 2 huge games the last 5.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler in a matchup that seems one that's going to be conducive to success. And then Keenan Allen, who we talked about earlier. Tough to get excited about Allen in any matchup. I think we have to consider more strongly Jonnu and Austin Eckler here. What are your thoughts?
I would go with Eckler. That's the one that jumps off the page to me. Brian Robinson was back last week, and Eckler was essentially their number 1 wide receiver. Jaden Daniels is going through. I don't think Jaden Daniels is playing worse. I think the film's out on him. Teams are adjusting, and this is pretty common. We saw Justin Herbert in year 2. make year 2, year 3, they started to tamp down on some of those big plays. That's what we're seeing with Jaden Daniels right now. So more short passing, good for Eckler. I'd go Eckler.
Hal's got a question circling back to a comment that I made, I think, earlier. How do you judge your opponent's potential outcomes? You can't use the commissioner software projections, can you? Because I mentioned earlier, hey, I'm going to look at my opponent and then make that decision for the flex and have that factor in. I would not use the numbers of the commissioner product. No, I would use common sense. I would use common sense. I would use all the articles and all the discussions on this show and the articles and the chat rooms.
Yeah.
Like, you should have a general sense of whether we expect this guy to score 5 points this week or 15. And you could just quickly look at the team and do that yourself, 5 or 15, and see kind of, generally speaking, before even getting involved nitty gritty, if you want to start really breaking things down. What would you say to this question? It's a good question from Hal.
Hal, I would say a guilty pleasure of mine is watching the win percentage. Now, those are not accurate, but for fun purposes, fire off and use them. Now, if you're using them to tactically set a lineup, I would not use those. I would use either our projections or rankings, or as Ray said, kind of map out what you think the production is going to be. But guilty pleasure wise, I love watching all right, I'm 70% to win. They got 2 guys left. So that's a fun thing for me, but yeah, it's a little different then.
Angelo mentioned the situation with the Raiders backfield that I broke it down earlier in the show. We still don't have White and Madison even practicing. It doesn't look like either veteran's going to play. So it's going to be the Amir Abdullah and Dylan Laub show. And again, 6 teams are on bye, and you know how this is going to go. People are going to want to start one or both of these guys. You're shaking your head no?
I've been out on Raiders running backs since week 5. I can't do it. I've gotten enough Zamir White questions. The poor guy, man. I like Zamir White. I've had to say no on Zamir White for 12 straight weeks. The Raiders are a mess, and I'm out completely.
All right, check this out. By the way, we got some not breaking news, but some news here to discuss before we shut things down. I mentioned earlier Devonta Smith missed the last couple of days with his hamstring injury. Didn't practice again today. He ain't playing this week. I don't think you missed 3 practices and play. And I said earlier, well, Johan Dotson's the next guy up, but so this is just more work for Brown, more work for Goddard, and more touches for Barkley?
Seems that way, yeah. I mean, I wanted to root for Jahan, but even in games Brown was out, they did not use him much, so bummer.
Another story, and again, I always wonder, it's probably not fair. I always wonder with wide receivers, because they seem to be the lunatics of the sport, right? Is this partly because I'm not happy with what's going on? Is this a real injury? I don't know. Let's assume it's a real injury. But the bottom line is Malik Neighbors is dealing with a groin injury. So now there's concern about him catching passes from Tommy Cutlets. I think everyone should have concern about anyone trying to catch passes from Tommy Cutlets. But now we have Malik Neighbors. Yikes. Let's play this out. Let's say Neighbors misses the game. Wandale Robinson going to get 15 targets with an average depth of 1.1 yard. Is Darius Slayton a thing? Is Theo Johnson someone to look at? What would you think about this offense with Tommy DeVito if Malik Neighbors were to miss the game?
So one of the sneakiest storylines for me this year has been the Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt snaps. And Giants fans have really been looking forward to Jalen Hyatt for a few years, but Slayton basically came in and threw him to the bench this year. I like what Angelo said, Tracy to the moon. Wandale's going to play his role no matter what. They don't use him deep at all. And his skill set is pretty optimized how they're using him. It's going to be that Hyatt Slayton thing. I know Slayton had a concussion. So I would say look for Hyatt. He's probably going to be, he played 73% of the snaps last week, 4 catches. That's a guy, 3rd round pick. He won the Biletnikoff at Tennessee. He was actually the best receiver between him and Cedric Tillman in college. So if you're looking for like an upside weird play, it'd be Hyatt. But if Slayton plays, it could just be hell. And then DeVito could be 4 for 22 passing, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. It could happen. You laugh. He threw for what, 87 yards in a start last year?
Yeah.
So it could happen. Final question for you. Alejandro asks, Adam Thielen, I'm worried about his status. Yeah, at this point in time, I'm not expecting him to play, which sucks because I added him in multiple leagues myself last week. I don't know if Thielen's going to play. Even if he plays, can you feel good about it? So Alejandro, is asking, should I wait or pick up Dobbs, who we just talked about, or Sterling Shepard? Sterling Shepard, another option here. Dobbs, Shepard, Thielen. What do you think there, Russell? Jeff Mans likes Sterling Shepard with Mike Evans back out on the field.
I like what's going on in Tampa in general. Yeah, no Chris Godwin. They need somebody to step up in that slot role. So Shepard with Evans back might not be a bad thing. The thing with Dobbs is they just have games where he's part of the game plan. So that's a risk, especially this year, more so than last year. But I might go Shepard there, but that is a close one.
Oh, well, the final one. Kyle jumped one in here at the end. We'll answer his question too. With J.C. Horn back for Carolina, do you see an increased role for Xavier Worthy in the slot this week for the Chiefs? We talked about Worthy. Worthy has had like 3 good quarters all year. He's not been a featured part of this offense at all until last game. He was extremely at the start of the game, like every other play was Xavier Worthy, and then he forgot how to keep his feet in bounds and he disappeared the rest of the game. He's a ceiling play, but there's a floor of like 3 points. Like that's in the bye week, 6 teams on bye. I'm not going to say that Worthy can't be an option for people, but I can't trust 1 quarter of him being a featured player in this offense to mean I feel confident in starting him, even with all these teams on bye, Russell.
Pretty peculiar that they play a team that are probably going to play in the playoffs, and then Travis Kelce is just nowhere to be found, and they're featuring Xavier Worthy. So I don't know. Something stinks there, guys. Something stinks there. I do think they want to develop Xavier Worthy, but something stinks there to me on all that usage. So I don't know what this week against Carolina is going to look like. If it's optimal usage for the Chiefs, then Travis Kelce is going to get 10 targets a game, but maybe this is a thing they're working on in the second half of the year to get Xavier going. So I think he's a fine flex play, but just remember what the first 11 weeks of the season looked like.
Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com. To get all of his work, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. You get the DFS, the seasonal, and the wagering, all of it fantasy football related the rest of the way throughout the playoffs. The only thing that's separate is the wagering guide for the Super Bowl. Everything else you get for that $99 price tag. Russell's with us every Friday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. What do you got going here the next 48 hours, Russell? You got some college stuff you're doing in addition to some NFL?
Yes, college. We're directly after this. We're going to be looking at the staff, circa bets, and with Rob Brink going to be hosting that, so that'll be fun. Always fun to go through the staff's picks against the spread. Everyone has so many different views on things. Also, going to be having a college football DFS article coming out tonight or tomorrow morning. Breaking down the main slate on FanDuel. And then I will be subbing in for Mike the Beard tonight, hosting the live stream for college football. So I'll be chopping it up with Rose and maybe Scott Bondar. We'll see who else is on there. So should be a good time.
Russell Clay of fantasyguru.com. You can follow him on Twitter X at Russell J. Clay. He will be back with us a week from now. We will be doing the show the day after Thanksgiving, so we'll be here. Hopefully you'll be there. I think we're going to be doing a show on Thanksgiving too. It might be a short one, but we're going to try to power through next week as normal. So if you're able to watch us, please do. Russell, thanks for your time today. Great visit as always. And we'll do it again with you in about a week.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray.
Or exactly a week. I don't know why I said about a week. Next Friday at 12:30 Eastern Time, we'll bring Russell in. Have a great weekend, folks. Good luck in week number 12. Don't forget, subscribe tab, top right corner over at fantasyguru.com. For Russell Clay, I'm Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.